Hello there, my name is Doc Conrad, and this is my little preamble to the podcast. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to everyone who is a part of this podcast, including all the guests and the two wonderful artists who help bring this podcast to life. At Meloscav, at MELOSCAV, created the icon for this podcast, and at Doidaflower, at DOIDUHFLOWER, is the artist behind the visuals on YouTube and other social media sites. If you'd like to keep up to date with the show, follow the show on Twitter at CommsOpenPodcast. For the 5th episode of Commissions Open, I interviewed Chelsea Akpan, a cartoonist and illustrator for The Shorthorn, UT Arlington's independent student-run news site, and Broken Mirror at UTA, a student-driven creative writing event. In this episode, we discuss her unique retro art style, her wonderful personality, and how she has changed majors to animation to follow her true passion of art. You can follow Chelsea on Twitter and Instagram at ThanksCocoa. That's Thanks, C-O-C-O-A, on both Twitter and Instagram. Thank you, and have a wonderful day. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Commissions Open, an interview podcast all about art in the digital age. Here you can hear the processes, stories, and lives of artists, voice actors, video creators, editors, musicians, and many other talented creators in the era of online work. I am your host, Doc Conrad, and today we have the absolutely wonderful Chelsea Akpan, and I appreciate you for coming on tonight.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, I want to go ahead and get started with your a little bit about the history of what you do, because you are an illustrator and you are an animator, and you have your hands in a lot of different things, especially with like working somewhat professionally and working in going and working in your student newspaper and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious where it all started. Where did you first find out you had a love for drawing and animation, all that?
So like, I guess it's in the beginnings isn't really too special from like compared to everyone else. I suppose like started drawing like very very young, like as most kids do. But the thing with me is like I guess I kind of didn't stop. um, when I was younger, I used to draw, but quite a bit, and like I went to art camp and everything. But I think like when I first started taking it kind of seriously, funnily enough, and I don't think a lot of people actually know this, but like when I started like watching like internet cartoons and like stuff that was like flash cartoons and stuff on Newgrounds and like stuff like Ed's World, that really like inspired me to be like, hey, like I can sit down and draw comics and stuff. I really like this, so I started like creating characters and started making comics around those characters. And then one day I kind of started like bringing them to school, and like I let my friends read them, and they were like, wow, this is like really cool. Like I really like this. And I'm like, really? That's you like this? They're like, yeah. So I from then on, like when I was like about 12, 13, I started drawing more consistently, started drawing comics, and then when I was around 13 or 14, I started like posting them online on like DeviantArt and stuff, and then it kind of like took off from there, I suppose.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, what really gave you the grounding for your specific art style? Because I know this art style is this art style is one that I've seen like a very like exaggerated with some people's like with people's like features and
Mhm.
different like things. What would you say is your main inspiration for your specific art style?
And I really never know how to answer that because like it's always the process. Like I'm always pulling inspiration from a variety of different artists and stuff and different things. So uh, it's hard to say, but a lot of artists like Tyrell on Twitter and I think on Instagram, uh, they recently have been like a great inspiration for me. Like a kind of like harking back on those old like cartoons, like those old cereal commercials, and like how they would like um, animate like the cereal mascots and stuff, and that sort of like style and that era has been really like inspirational to me recently, as well
Mhm.
as like Stevie Barbola. She's been really great. I've always loved her work, and like those are just a couple of people I've like been looking at when I was a lot young, when I was a bit younger in high school, I really, and even still now, like I love her, like Rebecca Scher. She's always been a great inspiration for me, and um, uh, a lot of things, a lot of my style back then was a lot of very reminiscent of her work at the time. But I think I've kind of broke away from that and started like um, uh, kind of clinging on to like something things that are more exaggerative, more colorful, more like fun. Because when I was younger, I really kind of tried to like I harped on like construction and like uh, try to get things like anatomically correct and stuff like that. And nowadays, it's just like I just want to draw like a fun shape, a fun character, a fun just something that is cool and kind of interesting to look at, and not so much focusing on those like very uh, things for me like that I thought were very limiting at the time. I can just kind of break away from that, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. No,
Yeah.
that definitely makes sense, especially from your specific the way you I would go ahead and say like the stat every pose that you draw is never static, and a lot of
Hmm.
and every single like if there is a static pose, there's always something else going along with it.
Hmm.
That like shows either a bit of motion alongside of like some a character is like about to do something, or a character is like whether it be like they're looking a certain way, or they are doing a specific action. Like you could definitely tell that every single image looks like it's about to be animated. And I could see that I could see that from nearly every single one of your drawings.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
That means I'm doing a good job.
You really are, and your work that you have done has of course gotten you recognition from your student newspaper, which is one of the biggest things that you've been working on as of recently. At least it's the one
Yes.
you've been advertising the most.
Hmm.
How does
Hmm.
it that you got into that you got into that?
Oh, okay. So this is a cool kind of story. I was approached by one of the editors, the social media editor, Ed. Hi, Ed. He approached me, and they were doing a story about like women in art. This was last year, last spring, I believe, and they were doing a story on women in art. And I think he had contacted me through Instagram. He had saw my Instagram at the time. He was like, "Hey, I really like your work. I mean, are you interested in doing like an interview, talking about your stuff?" And I was like, "Of course." Like, I think this is like kind of the first time I'd kind of done something like that, so I was really excited. Um, I sat down with him. We talked quite a bit, and we ended up. I had to take pictures for the story, and we were talking. I was talking to the photographer. I was talking to Ed, and like, yeah, it was really nice. And they were saying like, listen, like, we're looking for illustrators and people like you'd be great. I'm like, I would absolutely love like to work for the short run. I would love to work with you guys. Like, you guys seem really cool, and like that's experience I had never had before. Working for a publication, having your stuff like published. So I kind of every time I had seen Ed, I think I saw him like a couple times after that. I was like, "Hey, I'm still interested. Like, I'd love to work for you guys." I put in like an application, and I think the following semester, which was last last semester, they were like, "Hey, come in." My current editor, Shay, he came in. We did an interview. I was like, "Hey," and then like later, like the same day of the interview, he emailed me because like during the interview he was like, "Oh, it's gonna take maybe a few days for us to get back to you." I'm like, "Okay," and then later that night he's like, "Okay, change the plans. You got the job." I'm like, "Okay, cool." So yeah, so yeah, it's been really awesome working for them. I love the people there are really sweet and great, and Shay's like a great design editor, and he's always been like open to kind of like my ideas, and I like bouncing ideas off of him, and it's been a great experience because it kind of opened my eyes up to like getting stuff like into like or working in like publications and like magazines and stuff, and that wasn't something I thought I could do before, and now I'm like, maybe I like this. So
Uh,
yeah.
I could definitely go ahead and see that your art is the way that you have especially drawn for the paper I could definitely see in like a scrolling through my news feed. And if I were to go ahead and see like an op-ed from like a major journalist publication, I would go ahead and see
Mm.
something like that. I'd be like, oh, that's eye grabbing. I could definitely go ahead and see that. So you clearly have shown your work to be available for that. But I'm guessing that hasn't stopped your individualistic artistic expressions as well. You have plenty of character
Yeah.
design as well.
Yeah, I kinda see every, uh, uh assignment I have for the newspaper is just kind of an extension of like what I would usually do, and like kind of like I kind of take each assignment just like, okay, I can, for this topic I can kind of experiment with character design and kind of work within like the prompt or whatever, or like kind of experiment with color and stuff like that. Like it's always just an extension of what I would usually do. I try not to like steer away or try to conform into like a certain style. I always try to kind of do what I would do and like kind of experiment in that sort of way. And I think it's worked out for the most
Mm-hmm.
part.
I most definitely would agree with that. Um,
Mm,
but your art's not limited just to that. You have a lot of different you have a lot of different characters that you have drawn.
mhm,
You've done commissions as well.
mhm,
You've worked in you were working in freelance at the moment, and you
mhm,
have I'd love to go ahead and talk about specifically like characters that you have done
mhm.
and stuff like that, because I know you have some that you've mentioned that you've wanted to go ahead and bring up a little bit.
Yeah, so like I right now, like I'm trying to, and I don't know what I want to, how I want to do this, like whether this wants to be, I want to make it like a show at some point or just like have it as like a personal comic or something like that. But like I have this character called Maria, and she's like kind of the main thing I've been working on or focusing on, as far as like original characters go. And she's kind of like, the whole story with her is like she's just kind of like a hopeless romantic uh, type of character, I suppose. And she's kind of like the epitome of everything. Like I kind of all the cheesy sort of like that cheesy side of me. Like because like with all my
Mm-hmm.
characters, I kind of try to put myself like a facet of myself into it, and so that it feels like the most genuine.
Mm-hmm.
So with her, it's kind of like a mixture of like all the cheesy, lovey sort of feelings I have, but also like these like ideas of like kind of like Arrested Development. Because she's like an older character, she's like 16, 17, and it kind of, I want to kind of develop her in a way where it's like it kind of reflects on my kind of feeling of like uh, being stuck. Even though you're like getting older, you still kind of feel like you're younger, and working like doing cartoons and working in cartoons kind of definitely makes you feel that way. But
Mm-hmm.
like in a way where you kind of feel like, I don't know, in a way where you feel like you're just like not progressing the way you should, compared to everyone else. And like I kind of want to explore that with her. um, and yeah, that's kind of like some of like, that's kind of like a passion project for me right now. I think I
Mm-hmm.
want to make, turn it into a comic, maybe turn it into maybe like a animated thing or of some sort. But like that's kind of the thing, like when I'm not working on commissions, when I'm not working for the newspaper, when I'm not working on like other projects that kind of come in and out, that's the thing I'm kind of almost like my comfort sort of drawing comfort thing that I can always go back to.
Mm-hmm.
So
Uh,
yeah.
I definitely I could definitely go ahead and see that. I've seen to touch a little bit more on the what you're saying in more of a broader sense, especially with the
Mm,
way you create characters, that being like an
mm,
extension of like how you emotionally feel.
mm.
That is like a big thing for a lot of different artists and animators.
Oh
Is
yeah.
that is like the main drive is that it is always either be an exaggeration or a reflection
Mhm,
of an emotion that you personally feel, and that being the
mhm,
central idea of the character,
mhm,
and being able to go ahead and show that forward and make other people either relate to it or see it and recognize it, and not having that would be a little bit more. I wouldn't say devoid, but
mhm,
it's definitely one of the more important aspects of it, and I definitely think that from that when you stated that like create being an animator or a cartoonist, you have to be really in touch with with your emotions, because if you want to go
mhm,
and further express it, you have to recognize it yourself. You can't be like closed off from it.
mhm,
So I definitely think that in terms of in general, artists and animators have a lot of different perspectives on whether it be life or being more in tune with their emotions and their feelings, because they're
mhm.
all about expressing through creativeness, and a lot of the creativity is based on feeling rather than like
Yeah,
things that are more static.
yeah, definitely, definitely. I absolutely agree. I feel like you get the most like genuine, sort of work when an artist or a cartoonist or an animator does tap into those like kind of emotions and those like kind of things that you otherwise wouldn't have really thought about, I guess.
Hmm.
And I that's why a lot of my favorite artists, like Rebecca Sugar, like I feel like she has such a genuine sense of how she creates and how she like expresses her work and her experiences, and like you can see it in her past work with like Pug Davis, and like just all the things she's created. You can tell that it comes from a place of being genuine and being like trying to like accept yourself and accept these emotions and process these things. And that's something that I've been trying to kind of do once I do have like a sort of like a series that I can like continuously work on. Like that's kind of my goal, is to come across as genuine and um, kind of process these like feelings that I've had before, or feelings that I'm going through now, and things I've just thought about that I feel like are important to explore in these different characters. You know?
Yeah, yeah, I can definitely go ahead and see that your, and from the way that the way that you express each of your characters, there are, you have a lot to you have a lot to show, and I definitely think that you deserve more attention. From the way that from the from what I've seen, like it's been a hot minute since I've seen like an artist who has who has like created who has created in the way that like is even like like similar to what you do. Like you said, you have inspirations from older styles of like you said,
Mhm.
cereal boxes and all of that. Like
Mhm.
there's something like, I don't want to fully say retro about it, but there's definitely like these
Yeah.
there's definitely like some influence coming from that, and I definitely think that
Mhm.
I can definitely tell, like I can I don't want to go ahead and assume things, but I can like when I no when I don't want to go and assume things, but when I see your when I see your artwork, I feel like I know quite a bit more about how you feel and how you
Mhm.
act than some other artists who draw based off of like their, how would I put this, more like some comic artists really like hone in on the relatability side of things, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I can definitely tell
Mhm.
that with your art in specific, yours is a reflection of emotions that you feel, rather than like, oh, I gotta go ahead and be relatable to these people.
Yeah, and yeah, like, and nothing wrong with like trying to be relatable. Like, I get it, but
No,
like,
no.
yeah, I a lot of my influences do come from like more of like, I guess the word is like retro, like older things. Like I would, in terms of like anime, I always kind of prefer like the older styles of anime where it's like more rounded, more cartoony, more expressive, more like exaggerated, and like these simple shapes and like these simple colors, but you can like do so much with that. I've m- like in the past like few years, I've been really like infatuated with that and really enjoying that, and how like an artist can like convey so much just through so little sometimes. And I'm trying to like get my art to that point, where it's like using these like simple shapes and like these choice of colors, because a big thing with my art too is like color, and I think in color a lot, and that's kind of how I am able to kind of express what I'm feeling as well. It's just through my color choices and stuff. And uh, I'm trying to get to the point where I'm like, yeah, like this is, I don't know, like that's something I'm continuously working on with my art in general, with my style, with how I'm trying to convey certain things or certain expressions and stuff like that. So
Mm.
yeah,
One of the things that I've also noticed, like this isn't a full on rag, but like from some of your artwork, like some of the lines aren't exactly like quote unquote clean. Um,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
I definitely can go ahead and see that as being like it's a style that's very like impressionistic of like this conveys a feeling rather than total accuracy. Some of,
Mhm.
especially your early, I don't tend to go ahead and like harp on specific pieces because I did that in my first episode, and I'm like I've
Mhm.
recognized that like it's better to go ahead and talk more about the artist in general than any of that. But like I'll bring this
Mhm.
up for this case. Your Maria piece with that's your
Yeah.
banner as well. Like
Mhm. Mhm.
I'm just looking at it. I'm like, oh, some of these lines, like some of these colors, like go a little bit past the lines, and
Mhm.
some of these feelings go through. And I definitely don't think that that was at all a mistake. I definitely feel like that was an
Mhm.
artistic, stylistic choice rather than it being like a, oh, well, I forgot this little bit right here. Like no, it conveys like this is a general. It tells you the warmth of the warmth of the piece of like the different sort of colors bring that out. And I definitely think that
Mhm.
you bring that out a lot, and I love that.
Yeah, like, and like, that is something that I was talking to, someone about this recently, but, like, um, yeah, like, I really like sketchy lines, and I really like just, like, the I don't know, like, my relationship with clean lines has, like, ended a long time ago.
Hmm.
And, like, I feel like I always have to, like, kind of draw in a way where it kind of like, shows, like, I'm almost using, like, a pencil, like, pencil to paper without using pencil to paper, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
And, like, I know when I used to draw when I was younger and I was really harping on, like, clean lines and, like, perfection and stuff, it really, like, sucked, like, the fun out of the actual drawing, and now I feel like I have so much more fun drawing because it's like, I do this line, and not to say, like, uh, I don't, like, undo, like, every second when I'm drawing, but, like, uh, yeah, I don't know, it's much more fun and much more loose and much more, like, a bit freeing to just be like, it does not every line has to be perfect, not everything, and then there's charm to that imperfection.
Mm. I can I could definitely tell that like I could definitely see that, and I'm glad I was able to like because when I first saw your work, I was like, oh wow, this has this I love this feeling that I'm getting. But until I was able to like verbalize it, I never fully like recognized that sort of like idea. And I think that is a great thing to go ahead and like. I think it's a great feeling because what it
Mhm,
shows is that you are able to have your work be deeper than at face value, and I think that's very
mhm,
important for any artist.
mhm. Thank you.
Yeah, no, of course.
I never like heard any like I don't know like I kind of look at my lyric and I'm just like this is just my stuff like I don't know
Hmm.
like this is just like at the end of the day I try to like have fun with my work whether it's for like jobs or for my job or for any other projects like at the end it's just I'm just trying to have fun
Hmm.
and I'm glad it's like coming across that like I'm having fun I guess.
Yeah, yeah. I like to go ahead and especially like not I don't tend to like I want to give praise where praise is due, and there's definitely a lot of praise to give for your art. So it's very important to
Thank
go
you.
ahead and say. Um, but I want to go ahead and discuss a little bit about this a similar situation with being the illustrator for Broken Mirror.
Mhm,
Because
mhm,
it's less of it's something that I've seen a little bit less of your work on, but it's still like as
mhm.
I believe it's still as important. Is it just was it just for the icon, or do you do like specific like in terms of like them
Okay,
doing
so
writing? Like what is it?
no, okay. So yeah, so if not everyone's familiar with it, Broken Mirror is a like writing group writing event on campus. It's for my school as well. And the creator of Broken Mirror is actually another editor that works for, that I work with in the short run of the newspaper. But this is like his own separate thing. And essentially he like approached me one day to like do like a poster for Broken Mirror for like the first poster when he was starting it up and I was like yeah sure and from there it's been like now I'm like an illustrator for them so I'll be doing like future posters future like images like social media icons and stuff like that and yeah it's been really fun it's been another like cool experience because me and Cameron, he's the one who runs Broken Mirror. We like bounce ideas back off of each other. I feel like it's a really like a real process to get to these posters, and like there's so much that kind of goes into it, like thumbnailing and like kind of what like what feeling, what vibe do you want to like convey through the poster itself. And like when we were first like kind of bouncing ideas off, and when he was kind of explaining like what he would want out of this first poster, he sent me like covers of like old Pulp Fiction novels, and from
Mm,
there I was like, okay, that's the sort of like feeling of kind of like mystery, sort of like maybe dread, a bit of eeriness that I could kind of explore with these posters, and like obviously like these other images that I'm going to create as well. And it's been really fun. I've been really enjoying the creating for this. This is like a something else I haven't really had experience in, but I'm really enjoying it. And I've found myself experimenting with this um, because I've always kind of worked in a bit of a limited color palette. There are colors I like, and I will always use. I feel like in every piece, like this yellow or like
yes.
this specific red. But he with Broken Mirror, I'm kind of experimenting and trying to break out of that just a bit, but still trying to like, okay, no, wait, I'm still drawing this, so I'm still gonna make it kind of the way I want it to be.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's been fun. It's been really fun kind of experimenting with just like design and like what would be eye catching to a person, but also kind of retain that like creative I don't know, just still make it look like creative and fun and like intriguing without like shelling out, I guess. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. No,
Yeah.
no. I definitely think that with every artist, taking any thing that a client specifically asks, and I'll consider them clients because I want to move into the next thing. But I think that
Hmm.
when any artist takes anything from a client, it's all about the delicate balance between what you want to make and the stuff that you've made in the past, and the work that
Hmm.
and the design that which you have versus what the client desires. And they have to realize that both of them are interested in in an ideal situation. Both of them trust each other
Hmm.
with
Hmm.
whatever the artist makes. So,
Hmm.
but moving forward from that, I'd love to go ahead and talk about your experience in the commission world, because you are doing
Yes.
freelance work.
Hmm.
What has been your experience doing so? Like, when did you first realize, like, oh, I want to go ahead and work on things that people ask me to go ahead and work on? What was that point?
Uh, let's see. I think so when I made this like when I made my Instagram account, I this was like a couple years ago. Um, I was posting not so frequently, but posting, and like I took like a I kind of ignored it for a while, and then I was like, okay, if I really want to, take art take art seriously and stuff like that. This was like after I changed my major to art, like before I was studying something completely different, and then I was finally devoting all my time to art and like focusing on it, and that was like my full time thing, like So I was like, okay, if I want to really focus on and like make art like a career and like a thing like that I'm doing that I could possibly make money out of or from, I should take this account more seriously and like post more consistently and stuff like that. That way, if I once I do open commissions, that'll be people can see like, oh, this is her body of work. We might be interested. So I think about a few, yeah, like a couple years ago or so, I finally opened commissions just because like it was sort of like the thing that like, I've seen other artists do it, so I'm like, "Okay, well, I could do it," but I was also, like, under like, what's the word? I feel like now in retrospect, I feel like I was charging too low for my work because 'cause I'm like, "Well, I wanna be fair to the person who's buying it. I don't want them to charge them, like, a ridiculous price, for work that I don't even think that is worth that much," you know what I mean? And, uh, in my experience in doing commissions, I found that, like, I I am starting to take more pride in my work, and I'm like, okay, I'm making something you can't really get anywhere else. Like this is my work. You're paying for my work, and you're paying for like for me to draw in my and like you're paying for me to draw for you. And it's important uh to recognize that and be like, okay, well, it's not fair to me because if I do want to make this like something I can kind of live off of at some point, then I need to be fair. But in terms of like or people who have commissioned me and like I've haven't had any horrible experiences, luckily. And I'm very happy to say that like everyone who's commissioned me has been very polite and friendly, and for the most part, I think that they've been very pleased with what I was able to give them. And a lot of my commission, it's either like I feel like I found that like people commission me from like, oh, I heard of you from like a friend of a friend, or like I like a lot. I've ended up like doing commissions for like 5 or 6 people in the newsroom, which is so funny to me.
Hmm.
And like recently, like someone who works in the newsroom, their cousin also reached out to me to do a commission for them, and then it just kind of it's like everything's linked. Um, I also have gotten work from like doing tabling events at like just local art events and stuff, and which I don't do as often as I probably should. But whenever I do end up doing them, I've gotten people who have reached out to me afterwards and like, hey, I really like your work. Can you do a commission for me? Or at one point, I showed a painting at this at a show, and um, a few days after that, someone emailed me about purchasing the painting, and I was able to sell a painting, and that was my first painting that I'd ever sold before, and it was just something I'd worked on in my painting class the summer before. So I was like, "Oh, this is really really cool." Um, but yeah, it's very very interesting. I'm trying to look into doing more freelance work for companies or like different businesses or other publications as well, but like
Hmm.
doing commission based work for just like different like separate people has been really fun because I really enjoy seeing like their response, and like if they really like the work, then they're not afraid to tell me that, and that makes me really happy. And like um because I used to like have such a fear of like, oh my god, what if they don't like it? Or
Oh
you
yeah.
know, I used to like really dread doing a commission because like uh, I kind of want to draw it in the way they would want me to draw it, rather than just drawing it the way that I would draw it, and like you
Hmm.
know, being happy with that, and like
Yeah.
and I think a lot of artists experience that. Like when you do commission work, then you want to like please the person commissioning you, and you might like do things that you might not do if you were just drawing for yourself or just drawing for fun. So I think it's important to just realize that, the person is paying you or commissioning you for you.
Yeah.
And sometimes they may not be pleased, or they may not be like completely happy with the result, but at the end of the day, like that's what it is. And I think you should still have pride in your work and not like undersell yourself at all. And I understand like in this sort of thing, it's like, well, yeah, but also will people, come to me for these prices or stuff like that? And the answer is like I've had my stuff, I've had like commission prices that were like really really low, like ridiculously low, and people weren't flocking to that. So I'm like, at this point I'm just like, well, I might as well just charge a fair price, and whoever's wanting to come, they will come. And I mean, that's kind of people have there have been a few people that have come and be like, hey, so I want to commission you, and then when I give them a price, they're like, oh yeah, that's great. I'm like, oh, okay. Cool. Like I don't
Hmm.
have to like beg you to like pay this price or something like that. So
Hmm.
um but yeah, in general, it's been very pleasant. Just like actually talking to people who've commissioned me and stuff, and it's just more so about me like kind of valuing my work and my own art more, than kind of and giving myself a bit more credit that I have in the past. So
Yeah. I'm glad that you've been you not only went through that process, but you've gotten out of it. Because I know
mhm,
there's quite a number of artists or freelance workers who think that if they want to go ahead and get any sort of work at all, they need to be at the lowest price point they possibly can, so they can even be considered. Um,
mhm, mhm,
but I believe that the true answer is that a lot of people don't base it off of like I need to find the cheapest thing right now and then pick anything. What they go for is they tend to go ahead and commission from like you said, what people you know or people that you have
mhm,
experienced with.
mhm,
I've never thought about like personally, I've never thought about going for a commission price only because the price was cheap. I've always thought
mhm,
of
mhm,
everyone always thinks about the about like what they want in their head and they go to the artist or the voice actor or any sort of like
Mhm.
content creator that they want to do that's open for commissions, and they go to them
Mm.
instead of it being the inverse of trying to find out from the budget what they want to have. So
Right.
I definitely think that a lot of people need to recognize that their work not only is this experience one that is your experience is of course unique to you because of the way
Mhm.
in which you experienced it, but it's the one that it can be
Mhm.
reflected in a lot of different creatives with
Oh,
how they
definitely.
feel about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
okay, so you I wanted to go ahead and talk about a little bit more about who you are as a person, because we've talked a bit about your art. I'd love to go ahead and know a little bit more about how you got to this point in your life, just in general. I'd love to go and hear about it.
Okay, so okay, a little bit more about me. So I am currently 22. I live in North Texas. I am Nigerian, and my I moved here when I was like 6 months old. But my parents are from Nigeria, born and bred, I suppose. And a lot of the things like when I was growing up, I didn't have like the best relationship with my parents, specifically my mom, but I guess both of them. And because it's mainly because of like uh, how strict they were, and even to this day, like they're a bit like, but it's gotten a lot better. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, they're really strict, and it's kind of the way it would you like the way it is in Nigeria. Like you kind of have like your children are to do what you say, and there's not really any like talk about like emotions sometime, and like it doesn't matter if your kid feels really bad. Uh, they just have to listen to you and stuff like that. And I really struggled with that when I was younger, quite a bit because I kind of felt sort of like what's it called? Kind of lonely, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of around 13. That's when I kind of went to like go to the computer and go online and kind of talk to people who I have like things in common with. And because I wasn't able to really like, I had friends in school, but I would only see them in school, and like I wasn't allowed to like go to like birthday parties, and like I was really like sheltered, I guess you could say, when I was a child. And from that I was able to like kind of experience like internet, and like make friends over the online, and like make really really close relationships with people online, and like uh, develop my art from there, like from an online standpoint, which is really interesting when I think about it, like kind of this generation of people who have posted their work online and talk to people online. Like there's such a cool thing that's happening there. But anyways, yeah, so I didn't have a great relationship with them. And just kind of it's gotten a little bit better, but like when I was going to university, I really wanted to go to school for art. And I wanted to go to Cal Arts. That was like my dream school. That's like everyone's dream school.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously, it's in California. Obviously I wouldn't be able to afford it. Even if I did get it, I don't think I would have been able to afford it, no matter how many scholarships I could have gotten, perhaps. And also, my parents, they were not into it at all. Like I kind of begged them to be like, I really want to go to school for art and blah blah, and they're just like, no, like that's not feasible. Like you have to be a doctor, you have to do something in the medical field. So I was like, okay, well, okay. So I kind of like swallowed my pride, and I ended up going to school for like pharmacy. That was what my dad wanted me to do,
Mm-hmm.
and I took school classes for that for a couple years. For my first maybe 2.5 years of university, I was taking like science classes and stuff like that. Mind you, I don't like science. I don't like chemistry, and this is like something that I've never had an interest in before, but like I was purely doing it only because my parents were kind of pushing me in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
They were saying all these things. And I think I tried talking to him before. Like I've tried talking to my mom, and when my dad wasn't there, and she was just like, well, blah 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 blah, bringing things that didn't necessarily have to do with like no, whatever. And I was just like, okay. It was more so like a guilt trip more than anything.
Yeah.
And I felt guilty about wanting to do something else other than what they wanted me to do.
Yeah.
Um, and it got to a point where like let's see, I took the PCAT, which was like a pharmacy entrance exam, essentially for like if you want to get into pharmacy school, you have to take this test. And I took the test, and like during the test, I remember like looking at the screen because it was on the computer, and I was just like, I can't do this. And as soon as I finished the test, my grandma was waiting for me outside, and I just like broke down. I broke
Oh.
down, and I was just like, "Oh my gosh, like, I really don't want to do this." Like, and she was just like, "You know what?" And she's always been a supporter of me in my work, and she's always said like, she's always been in my corner for a lot of things. But she's just like, if this is really like not what you want to do, like, just do it. And I was like, you know what, you're right. And a week, I think a few days after that, I changed my major to art, which but it's more concentrated to animation now. But I changed my major, and this is all while like my parents were like out of the country. And then I remember telling them like on New Year's Day, like, yeah, I don't want to do this. Like this is all over the phone. And yeah, and then my mom was like, okay, well, I'm gonna have to tell your dad. And then my dad was like disappointed in me, obviously. And even now he kind of makes like some snide remarks because he's stupid sometimes.
Mm.
And but up until that point, I was just like doing a lot of things that uh, I was doing other things for doing things for people, and I wasn't really finding like contentment within myself for the things I wanted to do.
Yes.
And I think at that point, I kind of figured out like I have to start doing things for me and making myself
Mm.
happy. And even if my parents are disappointed, or even if people are disappointed, at least I can say like, okay, I'm doing this for myself, and I'm very happy and that I'm doing it for myself, and I can find contentment in that. And it's still something I'm struggling with now.
Mhm.
Still something I'm like, there's a lot of things that I can do better or kind of stick up for myself for it. But like, I
Yeah.
think that's like a main thing that like I was realizing like, oh my God, I really don't want to do this. Why am I doing this? Like, it shouldn't be like this hard because I know like other families or or other kids who are artists, their parents like support them wholeheartedly and they don't care. And like, I just felt like it was kind of unfair that my parents were like, no, you're not going to do that. And blah, blah. And I guess I totally know, like, this is completely feasible for me. Like, I have
Yes.
enough like confidence in myself to like at least be like, no, like I can do stuff like that. This is something that's completely like, you can do this, like, you know. So but yeah, that's like the main kind of hurdle that I've kind of overcome and I'm still kind of dealing with now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know, like in general, like I'm a pretty like optimistic person.
Mhm.
Like I'm a very optimistic person, even when I'm like down or like when things are kind of like happening. I still try to keep happy, like try to be an optimist about things
Yeah.
and try to look on the brighter side and stuff, and that kind of keeps me going.
Mhm.
Because I have close friends I can talk to. I have like my boyfriend who I can talk to as well,
Mhm.
and who I've these are people I've known for years and years and years, and that I can completely trust. And that's helped me, like they've always given me confidence in like doing my work and stuff like that, and they've always supported me. And um, as well as people who follow my work online, though that also helps me quite a bit as well, and keeps me like motivated to continue to do work and continue to just keep making art, and stuff like something I'm really happy in doing. Like it, I don't know, it's just I can hardly like verbalize it sometimes because
No, you're fine. I think I don't want to go ahead and be like, oh, I know exact. I don't. I don't know exactly how you feel. However, what I have to say is that your experience, one, you're definitely not alone in it, and there are a lot of people who, and there are definitely some people who have this sort of like, they have this drive to do something else, but they don't feel like they've been able to do it. I want to let you know that what you have done is very, I hear about this a lot from people of just like, you, everybody's parents is a parent's ideals is a reflection of what they wished that they could go ahead and do.
Absolutely.
and that especially you know this out of everyone.
Yeah.
Some of these peoples, especially from parents of I've heard from multiple stories from parents of immigrants where their main
Mhm,
goal
mhm,
is to like be financially stable so that way their kids can have a good life, and then they reflect the I must be they reflect that within their children as well to become financially stable for their kids. And it's not exactly the thing that like this isn't exactly the thing that you want to go ahead and directly here. It's all with good intent, but in totally misguided,
mhm,
because the main point of life is to the main point I believe of like everyone's life is to find out what they want to do. And I'm guessing
mhm,
your parents have done quite a bit into getting you, and especially getting you over here and
mhm,
getting yourself and growing up in this wonderful country, and one that you can go ahead and express yourself in this way.
mhm,
But I definitely think that despite the fact of everything, I've heard a lot of people who have stated that like parents are the biggest thing that stop whoever is personally thinking about like doing the next thing because of what people think about you, because
mhm,
of what people
mhm,
want to go ahead and do, and sometimes it has great control over who you are. But I think that you are a wonderful example of the you are a wonderful example of being able to not only take what you love and make it work, but also being able to then make it actionable against what your parents have stated, against what people who are impressionable in your life have stated,
mhm,
whether that be like peers or teachers or parents. Every single person has the idea in their head of like you must do something for this other person rather than doing it for yourself. And it's rare that
mhm,
like and it's rare it's a little bit more rare to see what you are doing as an actionable thing.
mhm,
You hear stories about it a lot.
mhm.
And
Yeah.
I definitely think that might have helped you in that regard. But I just want to let you know
Mhm,
that you are one of those stories of people who can like push through the opposition of it being someone who is an authority figure in your life and pushing past it and
mhm,
making something absolutely wonderful with your art and your animation and the work that that you've made. And you clearly have the grit to go ahead and not only work with individuals based on commissions, but work with
mhm,
like bigger companies. Like some people, like there's
mhm,
quite a number of people who don't even consider that initially. They consider just to go ahead and do either the freelance work only. But you've gotten like
mhm,
you've done like work with you've done work with like other publications, and you're open to go ahead and doing
mhm,
work with other publications, and you know how to fit your art style to fit them best. You have a lot of talent in that regard, and your story is very is one that is very reflective of like the old generation trying to influence the new one, but
mhm.
also like one that is completely unique to you and one that you have overcome. And I know it can be hard sometimes, but I just want to say that you are completely 100% right that this is what you should be doing because it is wonderful.
Yeah, 'cause, like, I mean, I always like, I've said this, like, so many times, and I've thought about it, like, I can't imagine doing anything else than, like, drawing. Like, I can't see myself doing anything else. Like, I can see myself doing different facets of, like, art making and, like, being part of, like, a creative process, but, like, anything outside of that, it's like, I can't it's not me if I'm doing anything else other than what I'm doing right now.
Mm-hmm.
And, uh I just hope that, like, as I grow as an artist and as a person, then, like, I'm able to, like, reach those goals and, like, kind of prove my parents wrong and, like, show them, like, I can be very successful in what I'm doing because I made a path for myself.
Mhm. I definitely think that you definitely have what it takes, especially from an independent sort of standpoint. I definitely think that you have what it takes to like be a freelance artist and working with that. And I definitely hope that you, despite you having that your optimistic appearance, I know things can get down, and I know a lot of people who are feeling this, who can feel the same way. Whether it be pressure from themselves or other people. But I definitely think that you are going to be a shining example of someone who can push past all of that. So thank you for that.
Mhm. Oh, I'm glad that thank you. I don't even know what to say.
Okay, we are getting a little bit later on into the show. Let me go ahead and see here. I'm gonna look at my big thing of questions, see if I can go ahead and find one that might fit more. A little bit circling back to the field, unless you have anything else you want to go ahead and talk about in that regard
Mm,
about yourself.
Nothing I can really think of, other than nothing that I haven't really displayed like on my social media. Like I am uh, a goof, like, and I'm an idiot sometimes. And like I have a sense of humor. Like like I'm cheesy. Like I love
I
cheese.
love it.
Um, but yeah, like I feel like my work and like if you know me in person and stuff like that, or if you've even talked to me, like you can tell like I'm a very this kind of open kind of person, and like I just go where the wind takes me. I don't know.
And I appreciate that. It's a really good thing to be. Okay. I've already done the major inspirations. So is this work that you do right now? Do you consider it to be a
Mm,
full time job, or how much do you dedicate to it at this point in time? Because I know you're in college, but like compared to
yeah.
that, like how much time do you spend? How much time do you think you spend on art compared to like other work that you do?
Well, the only work I do is like related to art. So whether it's for like college, like my college classes are, art classes. So
Mm-hmm.
if it's not like stuff I'm working for like for commissions or for work, it's still like related to like art making and like things I could possibly bring into my own work as well. Um, Now the thing with me is I'm a horrible, and this is another thing I need to get better at, but I'm a horrible procrastinator.
Mm-hmm.
And like I think it's like a problem. Like I'm a horrible, horrible procrastinator. So I feel like I'm not drawing as much as I should be. But like a lot of my time when I'm not like procrastinating is like art making, like drawing on the computer, or drawing, or thinking up sketches, or writing down ideas and stuff like that. It all goes towards you know, I guess the process of art and drawing, and whether it be for school, whether it be for work, whether it be for like my own stuff, it's all like art in general, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I would say like a lot of my time is spent like just drawing and like thinking of what to draw, or like writing down ideas for drawings or for projects that I have kind of going on right now.
Okay. You consider it more to be a full time job, because I know a lot of people have like use it as like as more like a free time thing. So I'm
No,
glad
yeah,
I'm glad
it's
you're able to.
definitely Yeah, it's definitely like more of like a full-time thing for me. Like I was thinking about this like the other day. I was like thinking like I'm kind of like everything is like, because before like a lot of my stuff, like my world was kind of like centered around like school and like and up until recently it's just like now it's like, oh, like, well, I have classes, but like a lot of my time is spent like doing other things I'm really wanting to do, like going like doing like working on projects, or like doing broken mirror, or working for the short horn, or like doing my own stuff. Like it's not so much school centric now, it's more so like, okay, I have all these other things going for me and like things I want to do. And I think that's really interesting that it's kind of changed over time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Um. Okay. I have an interesting question for you, and this is probably going to be one of the last few.
Okay.
Where does your username come from? Thanks, Cocoa.
Oh yeah. Okay, so I made this username. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I made this username like a few years back, like maybe 4 years ago, and like I was trying to, because I've gone through a lot of usernames in like my internet history, but
Mm-hmm. As we all do.
yeah, yeah. So I was trying to think of something that was just kind of cute, and I was just like, I don't know, Coco. Like I like Coco, and I want people to like. It's kind of funny because like my personal Instagram is like thank you Chelsea. So it's like whenever people say thank you to me, it's like thank you Chelsea, and it's like at thank you Chelsea. And I always thought that was funny. I don't know, I'm stupid, but it's kind of like a play off of that, like thanks Coco, and I don't know, it just kind of rang off, like kind of like it just kind of worked for me, and I've kind of stuck with it. Like I have business cards of it now, so like even if I wanted to change it, I couldn't really change it because I have permanent business cards.
Mhm.
But, I don't know, I think it's just a cute little name, and, I think it's cute, like, whenever people, like I comment on sometimes when I comment on my friends' posts or stuff like that, I'm like, "Oh, this is great stuff." They're like, "Thanks, Coco," and it's like a comma in between. I'm like, it's like my name's Coco, and I
Mhm.
always thought that was cute. I don't know.
Mhm.
It's just a cute little name that I kinda thought up uh, I think back when I was making my art, like when I was doing my art Tumblr, I wanted to change it from what I had before, and I was like trying to think of names. I was just like, okay, well, this is kind of cute. Thanks, Coco. I don't know, it works, and I kind of stuck with it. So I don't know. It's not really that deep, but
While it might not be that very deep, what I must say is that all of you who are listening should go ahead and follow Chelsea on Twitter at thankscocoa and same thing on Instagram. And you can go ahead and get in contact with her from there. She has all of her links right there. I want to say so much right now. Thank you for telling me. Thank you for sharing everything. Thank you for sharing with me all of these all these like your artistic process, the work that you've done, your inspirations, and your story. I really appreciate you coming out for the podcast. Thank you so much.
thank you for having me. This is really awesome, and I'm gonna get better at my public speaking, I guess. So thank you.
You did wonderful. Thanks for listening to this episode of Commissions Open. If you would, please follow this podcast on whatever app you use. I would most definitely appreciate it. If you're just listening, that's perfectly fine. However, if you'd like, you can also watch this podcast on YouTube to see a custom commission every episode for each guest I have on, as well as to see the wonderful podcast set. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Comms Open Podcast. That's COMS Open Podcast on Twitter. Finally, you can follow today's guest Chelsea on Twitter and Instagram at ThanksCocoa. That's Thanks COCOA on both Twitter and Instagram. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.